we now welcome in JJ Redick, 47, Orlando Magic sharpshooter, and Mikey Award winner JJ Redick to shed some light on this NBA labor dispute. JJ, how are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Doing good, JJ. Let's start with this drop-dead date that Commissioner David Stern has issued and says that if a deal is not made by the end of business tomorrow, the 50-50 split is off the table and it goes down to 47%. JJ, is this like a car salesman? If you don't buy the Astro minivan today at this price, you don't get the price.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, this is a pretty hard-line stance in terms of a negotiating stance to give an ultimatum. And it generally shows that one side is not negotiating in good faith, which is kind of what we've been saying all along as players.
JJ, again, there's all these negotiating ploys and tactics, and one of the things that's being bandied about now is the decertification card. And you're a Duke guy, which means you're much smarter than me because I'm a University of Florida guy. I keep hearing about decertification. My question to you is, what the hell does that mean?
All right. Well, let me just explain one thing first to kind of set this up.
Okay.
We are a union, and we have a collective bargaining agreement that we have negotiated with our employers, and because we have a CBA and because we are a union, antitrust laws don't pertain to us. However, there's about 8 or 9 antitrust laws that our CBA violates, but because we are a union, the legality of it is superseded. So, essentially, decertification we would disband the union, and then a group of 10 to 12 players would, along with an antitrust attorney, file an antitrust lawsuit against the NBA. However, before we get to that point, there has to be an actual vote. But before we even get to the vote, there has to be a petition. So that's kind of where we're at right now. We need 30% of players to sign a petition calling for a vote. And then once that petition is signed by roughly 120, 140 players, then there would be like a 45-day kind of grace period where Billy Hunter and Derek Fisher and David Stern would still be able to negotiate. They would still be in power, essentially. Mm-hmm. And then after that 45 days, any player that would want to vote, any member of our union, could vote to decertify. At that point, we would need 50% plus 1 to actually decertify. And at that point, which is given if we did this in a week, if we signed this petition in the next week, it would roughly put the vote around Christmas. So, we talked about the drop-dead date, being somewhere in January for not having a season. So this kind of essentially puts as the antitrust attorney put it the other day on our conference call, it puts a 45-day shot clock on the negotiators.
So, all right, let me see if I understand this. Tell me if I'm wrong here. All right? So David Stern has given the players an ultimatum to accept the agreement on the table. Are the players pretty much giving the owners an ultimatum by saying, if you don't bend a little bit, we're going to dissolve the union and take you to court for antitrust? Is that what decertification means?
Essentially, yeah. One of the things that's kind of happened in this negotiation is that the owners have pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed from the beginning. This goes back 2 years when they gave us this proposal that was so draconian that there's no way in hell we would ever accept something along those lines. So they've pushed and pushed, and we haven't done a whole lot to push back. And this is kind of our one bargaining chip, really. We don't have a lot of leverage considering they are the ones writing our checks, and they are the ones that dictate whether or not we actually get to play basketball. Again, this is for the average NBA fan. I know a lot of people think we're on strike.
Yeah.
But we've been locked out. We all want to play. We all want to get back to work, but we've been locked out.
Do you think you have enough votes to decertify?
Well, again, that's where this process, kind of gets a little gray. I don't know if we have enough votes to decertify, and I won't know that until, 45 or 50 days from now if this petition is signed. Do we have enough votes to sign a petition? absolutely. We have more than enough players that are willing to sign this petition because it really is, I guess I would say, the lesser of two evils.
Yeah.
I don't think the deal on the table is one that we should take. And I'll publicly say that I don't think, as it currently stands, the deal on the table is a deal we should take.
What is it specifically about the deal on the table right now that you do not like?
Yeah. Well, so for the average NBA fan and for even some NBA players, 50-50 of BRI sounds fair. And that's not really the main issue, but to be honest, it really isn't 50-50. They're allowed to lop off about $600 million in expenses before we ever start splitting up. So it'd be essentially like Mike and I ordering a pizza, a 12-slice pizza, and we're going to say, all right, we're going to split this 50-50, but before we even split it, I'm going to take 4 slices, and then we're going to split the next 8 slices 50-50. But I end up with 8, and you end up with 4.
And plus, you probably eat faster than I do, so you're going to get more.
I'm probably hungrier, too. But so that's essentially how it works. But, the real issue is not the BRI, it's the system issues. What the league has created with this deal is a very onerous tax system. And any team paying the luxury tax essentially won't be able to go out and get free agents. And it's going to really, really restrict player movement. From what I've been told by a few different people, in about 3 years, probably about 60% of the league will be on minimum contracts if we took this deal. So you'll have your star players, and you'll have your guys on the rookie scale, and then you'll have pretty much the rest of the league on minimum deals. And one thing that's been really advantageous for us as players is the mid-level exception, and they've now put so many restrictions on the mid-level exception that, if for a guy, especially a guy like, let's say, Ryan Anderson, who's going to be a free agent after this season and is restricted, he pretty much won't have any option. He'll essentially be at the mercy of the Magic, whatever the Magic want to do, and they could, essentially lowball him. So it doesn't give guys true free agency. That's the problem with this system.
JJ, there's been the thought all along, and you alluded to it earlier, that the owners have been out for blood since the beginning. Is that pretty much what you believe? Yeah.
And I think that, we've given so much and we conceded from the beginning, and it's almost like one of those things where if you had told the owners 2 years ago that, they could get this deal right now, they'd be over the moon. This is a great deal for them. I don't think it's a great deal for teams that have big pockets and want to spend money, such as the Orlando Magic. I think it's a terrible deal for them. But for the small market teams, which in essence have been kind of guiding this negotiation, it's a great deal for them.
JJ, let me ask you this. Magic fans obviously are concerned about, mainly one thing, Dwight Howard. All right. Is there any stipulation in the agreement as it is that would give the Magic incentive or give Dwight Howard incentive to stay in Orlando?
Well,
or to give the Magic...
Not that I've seen. No. The only incentive that I can think of would be his bird rights, which would essentially give him one extra year on his next deal. But there's not... From what I understand, it's not like teams are going to have cap space to sign him. And another stipulation of this deal is the so-called Carmelo Anthony rule, which is essentially limiting or eliminating extended trades. So, Dwight couldn't be traded to the Lakers and then he could not then sign an extension with them. He would have to go into free agency. And then essentially at that point, I don't know who would have cap space and who would be able to even offer him a contract.
Gotcha.
Speaking with JJ Redick, your open mic on 740 The Game. With this deadline coming up tomorrow that David Stern has put out there, there's been more and more NBA players that are starting to speak up saying, hey, you know what, maybe we need to take this deal. Were you surprised guys are coming out like that, and what do you say to them?
Well, I've talked over the last probably week I've talked to my lawyers, antitrust lawyers. I mean, I've been on the phone for literally hours, and I would say to them that ultimately you have to make the best decision for yourself. I mean, I know this is supposed to be us players together, but I can't tell a guy who's at the very end of his career, who's due to make $10 million this year, and this is probably the last money that he's going to make, to not take this deal. I mean, for him to say, I don't want this deal would be an incredibly unselfish thing, obviously. So every player is in a unique situation, and I'm under kind of the perspective that we're very lucky, to be doing what we're doing. Obviously, even with this very restrictive system, we'll still be paid a great salary. But the other part of this is just the principle, and the principle of it is that we have gotten screwed.
Are you and other players prepared to miss the entire year?
I've said, and I told our assistant coaches this in June when we were working out right before the lockout. I told them, I said, look, I'm ready to miss the year. I think my hesitation is always in, will we get a better deal if we miss the year? That's where any sort of question mark kind of comes up. But, I'm not prepared to take the deal that's on the table right now. That's all I know. We can talk about hypotheticals all day long, but I don't want to take the deal that's on the table right now.
JJ, I want to get your I want to get your thoughts on Michael Jordan. All right, when he played, all right, he thought the players deserved the brunt of the money. Now that he's an owner, he thinks the owners deserve the brunt of the money. What are players saying about Michael Jordan and you, especially being a Duke guy? Is this just a North Carolina way of doing things?
Obviously, it's very hypocritical. Obviously, I mean that's. Essentially, Michael is out for his own self-interest, and as a human being, I can't necessarily blame him, but I will say that it's extremely hypocritical.
All right, JJ, what's your gut? Will we be playing by Christmas? Will we be playing at all this year?
My gut is that that's a hard question. I don't know how to answer that, and that's the truthful response. And the reason is because all along in this negotiation, I thought eventually rationale and logic would win out and prevail. But in the last week or so, I really think this tide has kind of turned, and now there's a lot of emotion involved. And when emotion is involved, it's a huge wild card, and everything's kind of up in the air right now. I was on a conference call last night, and there's a lot of players that are very angry with being given an ultimatum. We feel as a group that we have given and conceded, and we've got nothing in return. To use an analogy, it's essentially the owners are up 4 touchdowns on us, and instead of running the clock out in the fourth quarter, they're running trick plays and double reverses and trying to run up the score and embarrass us. I mean, that's essentially what has happened here. So there's a group of players that are extremely angry, and when emotion gets involved, anything can happen.
Do you think the two sides will meet again before this deadline tomorrow?
I'm not privy to that, so I don't know. I obviously read as much as I can, and I know that there's a group of players that are trying to get the union and the negotiators from the league together, but I can't say one way or another on that.
He is JJ Redick, obviously more up to speed on this than we are here on Open Mic. JJ, thanks so much for shedding some light on this very enlightening interview. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.